Yeah. No. The Ride On Sports.
What?
I know I was there.
Why?
Well, I had to get my teeth
Clean.
cleaned, and I said, can you
At
put Oh, yeah. For Miley. She just, yeah, no. Well, Miley told me. I haven't talked to Jim. So, George, we had another fatality
Something different.
on Boccaccio, the 17th.
Miley's had some, medical issues. She had the surgeries and some other things going on. She want to be the caretaker. She wanted more positive energy.
George, have we ever done a field trip? When I was with the county, we would do once a year. They would take us around to projects.
I haven't talked to Jim.
Yes.
I guess she has a different bit, her business different now. She opened a place on Alameda. I don't really know.
Now we can start the meeting.
No, we have about 1 minute left.
I was just picking on her.
You don't know what's going on. Sometimes.
Now, if you'd like to call it, we can call the meeting if you'd like to, Mr. Chair.
Sometimes that happens.
Or you want to wait a little bit?
Okay, it's 5 o'clock, so I'm going to call the Sea Valley MPO Bicycle and Pedestrian Facilities Advisory Committee to order. We're going to start with a moment of silence. We recently had a pedestrian fatality, and using our public roadways should not be a death sentence. So in memory of the deceased, we'll have a moment of silence, please. Okay, Dr. McAdams, could you do a roll call and identify who they represent so we can have a quorum?
Ms. Ashley Curry,
Present.
Andrew Bencomo.
Present.
We have Albert Casillas, absent. Erica Christensen.
Present.
We have Jim Wilcox
Present.
and Harold Love.
Present.
We have Rod McGillivray. Okay, Ryan Nunez. Okay, but he's not here, I guess. Okay. Daniel Bartholomew.
Present.
And Ms.
Jess Waller. And Mr. Chair.
Present, and Mr. Casillas has just
Oh,
entered
good. Okay, thank you.
the room.
That would give us a quorum.
Okay. Approval of minutes for February 21st is the next order of business. Are there any comments, corrections to the minutes?
We have to approve the agenda.
Oh, we didn't. approve.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I was got ahead. So I checked off the wrong thing. Approve the agenda. Any changes to the agenda? I'll hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Andrew Bencomo, so moved.
I second. Jim Wilcox.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. Now to the minutes. Any comments on the minutes? Hearing none, I'll hear a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I motion to approve, Jim Wilcox.
Andrew Bencomo, second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We have our first opportunity for public comment. Anybody from the public wish to make a comment at this point? Seeing none, we'll move on to action items. We have a tip amendment.
At this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Dominic Loya to talk about the tip.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the EPAC. So it is that time again for tip amendments. We have 4 of them this time, if I recall right. 2 by NMDOT and then 2 for safe routes to school. So we are going to go ahead and start with LC 00371. This is basically going to move from federal fiscal year 2023 to federal fiscal year 2024. This is the bridge replacement from mile markers 139 to mile marker 140. Like I said, NMDOT, so it's the move, and then also to increase the highway infrastructure bridge to $5,887,184 for a project total of $7,700,000. And this will positively affect performance measures 2, state of good repair. We then have LC 00290. This will be for both federal fiscal years 2023 and 2024. This is University Avenue Multimodal Project from NM28 to NM478. And it's for the multimodal roadway improvements. So this will be adding a new funding source, which will be the Highway Safety Vulnerable Road Users Fund for $4,323,176. It's also to put a set aside for construction engineering of $350,000 and then reduce federal fiscal year 2024 national highway funds to $6,919,564. The total project increase will match the engineering estimate at $22,121,629. And this will positively affect performance measure 1's safety targets and performance measure 2, state of good repair. We have LC 00500. This is Las Cruces Public Schools. This is for safe routes to school. This is additional SRTS funding of $350,000 to bring the total project total for this to $537,016. And this project will positively affect safety performance targets, performance measure 1. Then we have a new project, LC 00510. This is also for Las Cruces Public Schools. This is for SRTS. And this is a new project award of $317,343. And this will positively affect performance measure 1 safety targets. MPO staff is requesting BPAC make a recommendation of approval for this series of tip amendments. I will now stand for any questions.
Okay, I'll ask you, but Mr. Love may want to answer. On the University Avenue project, when do we expect design completion, bid, starting construction?
It's my understanding that the project will go to bid late this year, and construction probably won't start till in the spring.
Okay, thank you. And on the Safe Routes to School, those are TAP funding, is that?
Mr. Chair, that is TAP funding. I believe there are two separate TAP fundings for this. Ms. Curry may be able to speak more on it.
Sure, Mr. Lawyer, Mr. Chair, thank you so much. This is Ashley Curry for the record. The 180, I think the $537,000. So there's $187,000 that was awarded to us through a TAP application. And then the state had extra money, and they were very generous and kind to offer us $350,000 zero match. So we graciously accepted that. And then the extra $317,000 is the presentation that I made to the BPAC in February, and we were approved for that. So that funding should take us through 2027. Now, whether that's September 30th, 2027, or the start of fiscal year 2027, I'm just waiting for clarification from the state on that.
Okay, thank you.
So, thank you.
Anybody else, any other committee members have questions? I'll hear a motion to recommend approval of the tip adjustments to the policy board.
So move, Harold Love.
Albert Casilla, second.
We have a motion and a second to approve, recommend the tip amendments to the policy board. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes. So next we have prioritization of the Transportation Project Fund projects. This could get on to quite some length, so I'm going to ask staff maybe to help limit us to like 15 minutes for each of the presentations.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we will keep a tally of the length of time.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, members of the BPAC, so we received for the Transportation Project Fund 3 projects, proposals, one from the City of Las Cruces, one from the Town of Mesilla, one from Doña Ana County. The projects are being presented in order that they were received. We are looking for a prioritization recommendation to the policy board because they have to recommend, they have to have a prioritization this year. They cannot not prioritize them. They will not be accepted by NMDOT if they're not prioritized by the policy board. So they are policy board is looking for a BPAC's recommendation on these projects. And the first project up will be City of Las Cruces, and that'll be presented by Mr. Mark Miller.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mark Miller, Senior Planner, City of Las Cruces for the Comprehensive and Strategic Planning Program. I'll be presenting our TPF application today. Also in attendance, we do have representatives from Public Works as well as Stantec, an outside consultant that was assisting us in putting together this application. So our project proposal is for reconstruction to include ADA improvements, pedestrian, bicycle, essentially all the design elements within the roadway. I'll show you the real location with the next slide with our map, but it covers El Paseo, a small bit of Alameda, East Idaho, as well as South Walnut. Are you all able to see my mouse here? Okay. So you can see here, beginning of the project, this north-south corridor, this small bit of Alameda. We have from South Main all the way down to University, the entire stretch of El Paseo. For east-west, Idaho beginning over here to the west, from South Main all the way up, heading east to where it transitions into South Walnut, and then South Walnut leading all the way up to Lowman. That is the full extent of the 2 corridors that is included in this request. As part of the project, there's going to be a special attention kind of paid to this intersection right here of Idaho and El Paseo. This table provides just a breakdown of the different phases, estimated costs. The total request is a little bit over 3.8 million. This does get us a study, public involvement plan, all the way to preliminary and final design. I did want to give you all a just kind of basic picture of the existing conditions of the two corridors. If we look across them, there are a few high crash intersections. There are some bike facilities, but as a whole, they are kind of intermittent. So as a whole, the corridors aren't really contributing to kind of a cohesive bicycle network. There is one sidewalk gap on El Paseo, and generally there is sidewalks throughout both corridors, but they do generally fall below that 5-foot minimum that we're trying to get to per the NACDO best practices. Or sorry, 6 foot. Thank you. Additionally, there's various planning documents that we're looking to implement on both of those corridors. Do have a few typical cross sections just to give you a basic picture of the two corridors. Please take this with a grain of salt. It is measurements from aerial maps, so it's just to give you a good idea of them. If we start over on South Walnut near Lynn Middle School, Young Park, there are currently bike lanes there that are actually green bike lanes, and 2 travel lanes. As we move more south, there is quite a big difference in the right-of-way there. We go from some pretty significant size right-of-way width, and then it constrains pretty hard. I think it's around Skyway, I want to say. There is kind of a big chunk of Idaho missing on these cross sections that does not have bike lanes. But then as we get further to the west, west of South Solano, then we have bike lanes again. So all of this is just kind of point out that throughout Walnut and Idaho, you just have quite a bit of variability. You go from a major collector to a minor arterial. You have variability in the pavement condition. You have variability in the widths. Also, the actual adjacent land use and character of the area throughout the entire corridor. So that's one advantage of kind of including this entire corridor, so that we can look at this really variable right-of-way holistically with this project. If we move to South Alameda, this is kind of an important point. I'm sure this committee is aware of the reconfiguration that occurred on Alameda north of Loman. Those bike lanes that were put in, I think, earlier this year, maybe late last year. The piece of Alameda that's covered in this project, there are no bike lanes. It is just the 4 travel lanes. And as you move south, again, there's no bike facilities throughout El Paseo all the way down. There is some variability to El Paseo. That middle turn lane that you see actually is no longer there as you move towards University. There is some parkway a little bit north of Bouts, I believe. So there's a bit of variability, but generally El Paseo is a lot more consistent than Idaho and Walnut. In terms of crash corridors, there is 5 within the top 20, 2 within the top 10 for high crash intersections. For the background, kind of just asking ourselves, what's the vision? What's the goal for these corridors? We would look to elevate Las Cruces, our comprehensive plan. First off, elevate delineates between urban, suburban, and rural streets. And these 2 corridors are urban streets, right? So instead of just accommodating bicycle, pedestrian facilities, we're really trying to encourage that, really activate the roadsides in a way that allows us to get that transportation land use connection that works well with the character of the areas. If we look at the El Paseo corridor blueprint, it specifically talks about redeveloping El Paseo Road, obviously. Creating a more safe environment, a more equitable environment for all the road users. And again, opportunity to access the uses along that roadway and really work with the character of the area better. The active transportation plan, which I'm fairly certain all of you are familiar with, it has pedestrian focus areas, which are just areas where we really want to focus our investment. Suffice to say, the blue on this map in front of you are pedestrian focus areas, and the vast majority of both of these corridors are within those focus areas. The active transportation plan also provides the proposed bikeway network map, specific facility improvements for the overall bike network for Las Cruces. If I can kind of walk you through some of the recommendations for these two corridors. I should say Idaho all the way up through Walnut, except for one small segment, by the way, is also identified on the top priority projects in the ATP. And this first stretch here on Idaho from South Main, moving to the east, these separated bike lanes, that's actually the #1 capital project in the ATP. So we have separated bike lanes. As we move more towards the east, we transition into buffered bike lane recommendations. If we keep traveling to the east onto Walnut, we move into bike boulevard recommendation. And then for the rest of that extent, moving up north, we do go back into buffered bike lanes. For the El Paseo and Alameda corridor, there's a small bit of Alameda that is that bike lane recommendation. And then El Paseo, this is kind of an important point all the way from Loma and Amador down to University. The ATP does not provide a recommendation. It says further study needed. So again, this is kind of the big strength of this proposal is getting that further attention to El Paseo so we can determine what is the best, safest, most appropriate bike facilities along the entirety of El Paseo. So whenever we look at new projects, we always try and look at other projects, recent projects, try and leverage like recent successes, you know. So we did want to just really quickly highlight some recent projects that we completed. In kind of early 2021, planning initiated some efforts kind of in response to the pandemic that were identified in different toolkits for like pandemic response placemaking. So we partnered with sustainability as well as Public Works for temporary bike facility improvements along Nevada as well as South Walnut leading down into Idaho. These included green bike lanes, separated bike lanes, and some extension of existing bike lanes, all with temporary improvements. You can see here the location of it. And you can see that basically from Nevada all the way down, this is actually included in this current project proposal. So why a pop-up here, but also just kind of why a pop-up in general. Pop-up facilities are generally utilized kind of for two purposes, one or the other, either to demonstrate projects or as a pilot. So demonstrating some sort of design that maybe the city isn't used to, or maybe the public isn't used to, and kind of testing it out. Or a pilot where we're really trying to test a particular intervention in a specific area, which we can get that input from the actual users and make that inform the permanent improvements to that right-of-way. So it's kind of an iterative design process. In this case, it did become permanent, largely. What was those temporary improvements did become permanent through this stretch. So why was this specific location chosen. It's near Lynn Middle School, Young Park, transit connections. There was a slew of recommendations for that area that we wanted to try out. It's an opportunity to try out new things, and working with external stakeholders and getting community input. There was a lot of positive feedback. You can just see here where we kind of put some of our QR codes to get some public input. A bike ride that we did with our local Safe Routes to School coordinator, which was fun. And then here's just some of the examples of what it looked like at the time. And then, I didn't realize this until we were pulling the dates, but it was actually exactly 1 year and 1 day after the pop-up went onto the ground that another project went onto the ground, which was kind of building on that previous success. The Sustainability Office worked on trying to get cool green paint, identifying locations for this application. Cool green paint is to mitigate urban heat, and it's also intended to try and increase the life of the actual pavement. So this stretch was chosen largely because of the pop-up success, and that is permanent now. So 1 year, 1 day that went on the ground, which is pretty cool. You can see them putting it on here. I did just want to cover that just to kind of contextualize that the successes of that pop-up and the permanent improvements. The intention is that that can then inform this broader project for the entire corridor, and just again keep building on our previous work. With that, I'll stand for your questions.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask a couple of questions that are a little bit outside of what you're doing, but they're related. You referenced NACTO. Has the city applied for NACTO, or is that still on the list of things to do?
My understanding, sorry, Mr. Chair. My understanding is that that is still on the list of things to do. We have assessed the costs associated with that. It is a recommendation in our comprehensive plan and active transportation plan, but
Okay.
to my knowledge, we haven't moved forward with that.
Okay, and you talked about pop-ups. Are more pop-ups planned?
Currently, we do not have any more pop-ups planned right now, because we have been focusing on integrating planning with the capital improvement program, and these sorts of projects are kind of the result of that integration. So right now, we don't have any planned, but if you have any ideas, Mr. Chair.
Okay, well, the El Paseo corridor is quite important. It's a potential connection from Convention Center, which is on NMSU land, so it's a connection from NMSU to close to City Hall. If we continue past through Alameda, and then you have a pretty clear connection to where City Hall is, or to the downtown area. As part of the process, you talked about protected bike lanes on Idaho. Would protected bike lanes be looked at as part of this?
So in terms of the actual plan design, we utilize these policy recommendations from the ATP as the starting point. But I mean, my recommendation would be the safest and best facilities that we can fit into those thoroughfares is the design that we would want to go with.
And would the actual intersection at University and El Paseo be looked at? I mean, would you go through the intersection, or how, or are you starting on the north end of the intersection?
The extent as it's been defined, it terminates right there at the intersection. I would maybe defer to Gene of just to what extent that intersection would be looked at in the actual design. But I mean, I would recommend in any sort of new configurations that we absolutely have to take into consideration the intersection, how bike ped and vehicular movement is going to feed on, so. It did not include. Okay, so the current extent does not include that intersection then.
Okay, there's been discussion of doing some design along University, so maybe when that happens, if that happens, then that would happen, the connection, because there is the multi-use path that's just passed that intersection, but there's a gap there. You mentioned sidewalk gaps on El Paseo. Is that more towards the south, or where is the gap? Where are the gaps?
Mr. Chair, we're
Yes.
at 15 minutes.
Okay. I guess I'll let you
Mr.
ask.
Chair, just to respond to your last question, it's there on the screen in front of you, Farney and El Paseo. I believe that's kind of the most significant sidewalk gap area across that. And if I can, just really, really briefly to address your that intersection question. Yeah, a plan and design for University is something that is now actually currently adopted as of Monday through the CIP, through a complete streets bucket. I believe we've secured some funding for plan design for that. So depending on the timelines of that, I think how those two projects interact, that can be taken care of.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And I guess I'll apologize to committee members that I took up all the question and answer time. We can move on to the next presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, next up, we'll have Mr. Rod McGillivray for the town of Mesilla.
Mr. Chair, committee members, Rod McGillivray for the town of Mesilla. Thank you for allowing us to present for the 2024 TPF. So we've chosen a small project with an inexpensive project with a huge emphasis on safety. What we need to do is we need to take, I'm speaking to this group as if you're all familiar with it, our projects, because you've been with us the whole time. So we need to take the Mesilla lateral apart, the north side apart, and push it back so we can get this trail to go past it. We would like to install a curb and gutter and asphalt section to the other side of the Mesilla lateral trail. So if you remember, the Calle del Norte Phase 1 ran from the river levee to the Paisano. And then we did Calle del Norte Phase 2. They're not on this map, and Avenida de Mesilla is on the bottom of the map. This map's just depicting the location of the project at the Mesilla lateral. But Phase 2, we were able to get the trail to go from the La Llorona trailhead all the way to this point. So now what we need to do, like I said, is take that Mesilla lateral apart and rebuild it. So the project serves as a continuation of the Calle del Norte Phase 2. We want to modify the existing drainage structure to provide curb and gutter, like I had stated. Right now, users have to actually go on to past the edge of the pavement to get around the Mesilla lateral, especially if you have two people walking side by side, like a senior couple or a family. They're actually forced into the street. So this project's shovel ready. We had tried to put this in the last phase as an ad alternate, and we didn't have enough money to complete it. But the clearances were done and the SHPO evaluation was complete. So we'll probably just have to dust those off and refresh them. But we could easily complete this project in 12 months, and the project's only $163,262,000. That's cross-section of the project. You can see that basically we have a complete reconstruction of the north side of the road, and then we're able to bring the curb gutter pavement section past to the east side of the Mesilla lateral. Our project estimate, we're really comfortable with the estimate. Like I said, it's not an expensive project, $163,000. We've got a good contingency in there. We are going to have to do some additional engineering, so because we'd like to modify our other plan, but that's a picture of the Lateral, looking north. As you can see, I think we have, you can see it right there too. I think we have just shy of 5 feet from the edge of pavement to the head wall. In terms of the MPO prioritization criteria, NMDOT published 4 points, and this project hits 3 of them. Planning, projects identified in both regional and local plans. Projects ready, we could begin spending within 3 months and complete the project within 12 months. And it's a continuation of a previous phase. The one criteria that it doesn't meet is a bridge. It's not on the state bridge list. Safety was not one of the points that they had put out as a criteria, but I think it's probably the most important part of this project is to get people off the road. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Okay, so essentially you're gonna take that face of that structure and push it back far enough to let
The
people
entire
out. Is that how that
structure,
works?
Mr. Chair, the entire structure gets demolitioned and rebuilt.
Right. And further east, do you start running into right-of-way issues if you were to continue the trail? Or how far could you potentially go?
So this is the end of the Calle del Norte trail.
Okay,
I should say this is the end of the multi-use path. There, unless at some point in time, the path is allowed to go along EBID right away and go along the Mesilla lateral, either north or south. This trail's done. So the best we can hope for to get past this point would be some sort of a sidewalk.
okay.
Which would be an exciting project. We have to take down or relocate power poles and fire hydrants and get right away, and more than likely we'd have to pick the road up and slide it over a couple of feet.
Getting into the area where it was just built in 1800 something.
Yeah, so, but ultimately, if we could get a sidewalk that meanders between 4 and 5 feet to Avenida de Mesilla, we'd be happy.
Okay. Any other committee members have questions? See none? Thank you.
I'll yield my time to the gentleman with the city if you guys want to ask him more questions.
Mr. Chair, I would like to ask a question of the previous presenter, since we ran out of time, and now we have
Okay,
time.
how much time do we have?
Mr. Chair, we're at 7 minutes.
Okay.
Jim Wilcox for the record. I just want to get some information. You gave a list of types of accidents or situations where people were injured, I guess it was, what type of crash, whatever, something with pedestrians. I have no idea what those letters stand for, and you don't need to go back and tell me. Maybe everybody else knows here. So later, if you could leave me a link or something that tells me what those kinds of letters stand for, because I can't evaluate that. And then the second thing is over by Gandy's, there on the sidewalk, there's a telephone utility box and a telephone pole right in the middle of the sidewalk, right after the ADA access curb cut. And so if you're in a wheelchair, you get about 2 feet into the sidewalk and you have to stop. So what happens is people go out into the street against oncoming traffic in their wheelchairs to go to the nearest driveway. Will that be addressed when this road gets reconfigured?
Mr. Chair, yes, the full plan and design would be occurring on
Okay.
both corridors. So if there's really only 2 feet of clearance, as soon as we touch it, we have to bring it up to ADA as a bare minimum of 4 feet.
2 feet?
Well, the bare minimum for ADA is 4 feet.
4 feet, yeah.
But if there's only 2 foot clearance, then yeah, we would need to be increasing that. So I mean,
Okay.
things like that is something that we definitely want to be addressing through this.
So there's
project.
another one like that in there, is it Bosa Donuts? I can't ever get the pronunciation right, but there's another one like that. And how do these, can you give just a real brief how these things happen where they have a curb cut so it meets ADA, but then the curb cut 2 feet away goes into a utility pole, a utility box and a telephone pole? Is it meeting the letter of the law but not the spirit, or what happens with that?
So for that question, I'd really just defer to our Public Works
Okay.
Deputy Director.
Just
He'd be able
curious
to
how
kind of
this
answer that a
works.
little better than I could.
Yeah, thanks.
Good afternoon, Tony Trevino for the record. So a lot of these issues have been built in the past. So whenever we go and touch something, we have to address all these pinch points, these small
Pinch points.
2 foot. So yes, so no matter when we touch it with the road or whatever, we do have to correct these. And there's several around the city.
Right.
With light poles, street poles, right in the middle of the sidewalk.
And do you know where these are and they're on a list and you eventually have them on a plan to address them?
We do have the ones that we have encountered on a list, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot more out there that we have not documented. So
Would you like somebody to forward you if they find one and let you know?
most definitely, yes,
Okay,
sir.
great. Thank you.
So you have the sidewalk gap map. Would it be feasible to add these kind of issues to that? Because they're kind of very related.
Mr. Chair, yes, most definitely. As part of the sidewalk gap, we're kind of trying to get a GIS kind of story map going with all these critical points throughout the city. And so those would be some good information when we do get from the public. The extra eyes we have out there in the field will help us out tremendously.
And then Jim Wilcox again. Just if you could leave me some contact information, I'll send you I've got pictures too.
Okay, perfect.
Mr. Chair, thank you.
Andrew?
So I had a question about El Paseo, looking at the entirety of it, south of Cruces High all the way down to University Avenue, there's that lateral in there, and there's been some discussion here and there about extending a trail, because they're going to do, I believe, a trail project from the convention center south, and then it's going to go down into Tortugas. Is there any discussion with EBID about that, at least that section along El Paseo, putting some kind of multi-use path onto that as maybe a beginning point of completing the trail all the way through to the convention center? Could that be included in the El Paseo study, even though it curves away from it close to University?
Mr. Chair, there is currently I think it's an RTP grant that Parks and Rec has to extend the Las Cruces multi-use trail. It goes from University, I believe right there at north of Turntine, all the way as far north as they can, but like Las Cruces High School. And then went to as far as they could with funding, and there'll be the next phase to extend that. There are some issues there with EBID. We know with permitting in there. We did kind of install some sidewalks that we had to remove per EBID direction. So that is an issue with those hinge points and those kind of tight right-of-ways we're dealing with EBID and their permitting.
Okay, so the money they put in for, Parks and Rec put in for, it extends north of University and goes beyond to Cruces High?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I didn't know it did that. I
That's
thought it
certain,
just-
and I'm not quite sure. I think right behind Cruces High School is where it ends based on funding, and they're looking to kind of extend it further north.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Looks like we're probably out of time anyways. We'll go to the next presentation.
Mr. Chair, the next presentation will be from Mr. Mobed from Doña Ana County.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Mo Mobed. I'm the county engineer for Doña Ana County. And today I'm presenting to you a project called Desert Windway. And it connects I-25 Thorpe interchange going east all the way to city limit. And this project really, the highlight of it is really connects the fastest growing part of the city of Las Cruces to the I-25. And also on the west side, connects from the west side. There's people who are interested going to the national park, bikers and hikers, they driving that. So this project completes an east-west corridor to the region and significantly improves the connectivity. And this project has been in the works for a long time, over 20 years. And 2015 and 2020, actually, 2015, MPO had it as a priority on their growth and improvement. And also 2020, the city of Las Cruces, One Vision, One Valley was on their program. So since the whole property is in the city, Doña Ana County, majority of it, we had to take the lead to push the project through, and county has provided all the funding for the design of the project. And again, this shows you from the Thorpe Avenue, and like I said earlier, in 2040 vision, One Valley, this was as one of the priorities. And it will connect to the city limit at the Arroyo Road and also Red Hawk Golf Road. The project will improve the movement of people and goods in the community and creates alternative east-west to I-25. Instead of everybody driving south on Sonoma to get to US 70 to go anywhere, they can use that road to connect to I-25 and go to their destination. This is some of the photos of the area that is inside the BLM property. This project goes through about 1.7 of it is in BLM property, and no private development is going to happen. We just build in a roadway through the BLM, and the process of the design already going through the NEPA process. So we have hired the consultant to do the environmental study, and we are going to be producing the documents to BLM for the review. And as you can see, it connects to the National Organ Mountain Desert Peaks National Monument. As I'm sure you know, there are a lot of hikers and bikers using that, so traveling that road, and they use the National Monument. Las Cruces Public Schools has plans to expand some of their school system in that area, so they're supporting that project. And we have had meetings with them, and we have received a letter of support from the schools. And again, on 2045, MPO plan also shows this road as a priority. So again, because again, it's located all in the Doña Ana County, so we led to become the lead on the project. We have broken the project because we know it's kind of expensive, this project. And we have the segment west and central segment, and also the east segment. And we haven't broken down the cost to the three segments because at the beginning we were hoping to have a lot of funding, as we were told, but later on we were told that funding has really decreased. So we can break the project into three segments if that's all the funding going to become available. The segment one from the west side goes from Thorpe and goes to La Reina intersection. The second part goes to, which is the central, goes through residential area of Desert Wind Way. And then the east segment, which is in the BLM area, connects us to the Arroyo Road at the city of Las Cruces city limits. This is at the very, very west end of the project at the Thorpe interchange. As you can see it on the right side, that's the Ben Archer Health Center. And we are, based on our design, we are shifting the roadway a little bit north of Ben Archer so it can create a safer movement of traffic away from Ben Archer facility. And also we are providing, as you all know, we have a Job plant, concrete plant out there that right now they're growing very fast and they're creating a lot of truck traffic. So we're moving the truck traffic from Job Concrete on their own road away from Ben Archer, connects directly to the Desert Windway. If I go back to that picture, I will show you. On a segment, you will see that this drawing doesn't show it properly, but the road goes on the north of the tanks, and that's where we're connecting to Job construction site away from Ben Archer. So right now they're driving in front of Ben Archer to go to the concrete plant. This is the project design. We are designed it based on a 50 feet right of way, where we have the right of way as only 50 feet through residential. We're keeping it at 50 feet, but the rest of it we are procuring about 120 feet of right of way, so we can design it properly. And this is designed for a 30 mile per hour. And as you can see, it has 8-foot shoulders that can be used as bike lanes. The project goes through it affects about 72 of the properties, as you can see in the properties. And to keep the take from the property, we are not taking any property from anybody. We keep through the residential, we kept it at 50 feet. This is the estimated cost of the construction. Before COVID, this project was $8 million. As New Mexico DOT can tell you, the costs have gone up over 50%. So that's the reason you see the 13.3 price tag on it is not, and the county is matching that with a 5%, which is $704,000. Again, this project, like I said, is under design right now. We should be finished by 30% of the project this month, and actually more than that, 60% will be completed this month, and we should have everything designed completed by July of this year. And then at that time, we will use the design to acquire the right-of-way, which will begin immediately, and we should have everything completed by July of 2024. And thus we are ready to go to construction. Any questions? I would entertain any questions you all have.
Okay, so the county would pursue this even if the funding from the TPF was not awarded?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Will the county be pursuing this project even without the award of this grant?
No, the project, we do not have the funds to build any of it right now.
Okay, because you're talking about design. You're still doing the design, though.
Yeah, we have the county has put the money for the design and we are paying for it, but we need the money for construction.
Okay. So you mentioned a 50-foot right-of-way, but then you said something about a 120-foot right-of-way? Is that
120 foot through the BLM property and also on the west segment of it.
So in 50 years, if they have to do something about the road, you have the right-of-way for most of it, or?
Well, yeah, but that time the growth really gonna dictate what we do, and the route might have to be even go further north, change to something else, because unless if you have enough funds to buy the right of way, then, I mean, I used to work for TxDOT and I know we did it in Austin. So if Austin can do it, we can do it. So, so it's one of those projects that we try to keep it, minimize the impact on the property owners. The benefit of this project is the economic impact is enormous because you're creating connectivity from I-25 to fastest growing part of the Las Cruces.
Right.
And everyone that really pushed the project, unfortunately, doesn't own the property. County has to become the catalyst to push the project through.
Right, I guess inside city limits, the expectation would be that a developer would build the road because they would be doing new development. But here, through the developed portions, that's already been done, so
Yeah.
there's no development can happen there, and the rest of it's BLM where no development will happen. So
No,
that means that the roadway becomes a taxpayer burden, is that?
Mr. Chairman, committee members, I appreciate you saying that because we met with a lot of developers and they were very thrilled to hear we connecting that road. So,
Yeah, so the developers up in the city side will be thrilled
Yeah,
because they have a free
exactly.
connection from another access route.
you're right, Mr. Chair, yes.
Mr. Chair, I have a question, or two questions, actually.
Okay?
Where is this in relation to the urban growth boundary? Is there an
Where we
urban growth
connect to the-
boundary?
You saying where we connect to
Where
this?
is this road in relation to the urban growth boundary?
I don't understand the question.
So there,
I'm sorry.
is there an urban growth boundary established, efforts to maintain a compact urban environment?
Well, this is designed actually a rural road
Okay,
according to the county standards.
okay, I'll look it up to see whether there's an urban growth boundary. Secondly, you,
Okay, I'm going to have, since we have limited time, I'm going to let
Mr. Chair,
Ashley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. Sorry, the cross-section has an 8-foot shoulder.
Yes.
Yet this services the Organ Mountain Desert Peaks trailhead for bike trails and pedestrian trails. Would you consider putting in bike lanes instead of just calling it shoulders? Since that's what you're servicing, a major bike area?
you mean a complete separate facility?
Well, just a
Or-
complete street, so, calling it a bike lane, but calling it a shoulder when you've got a whole lot of bicycles that are using that seems like a missed opportunity.
We are always open for suggestions because right now, like I said, we are designing it, but at the same time, we're having a public meeting actually tomorrow night. I mean, a Thursday night
Okay.
at the school, Doniana School. So we're getting feedback from our customers and definitely we're using their feedback to see. The major issue, as you all understand it, is the funding.
Okay, I'll go ahead and let Andrew ask his
Thank you.
question.
Yeah, and it's not really a question, it's a comment reflecting what Ms. Curry said. It was, we're building a new roadway. It's going to be a connector roadway that it's far north. It's going to take a lot of traffic off of Main Street, places like that, move it out that direction. But it does need to be, in my opinion, a complete street. I mean, if we're going to build a roadway that allows access up and down like that, it shouldn't be just for cars. We call it a shoulder, and you're kind of throwing a bone to bicyclists, but it's not really for bicyclists. Can we build a complete street and put bike lanes, I like the speed limit, 30 miles an hour is great. Hopefully the lanes are narrow enough that people will do that, because you can call it 30, put a wide lane, and they're just going to speed. So if we could get a complete street, that would be awesome. I will stop.
Okay.
Mr.
How
Chair.
are we with time?
We have about 30 seconds, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the last thing that was related to Mr. Bencomo's comment, what would just, maybe in some future presentation, you can specify how you would keep this to be a 30-mile-per-hour street, other than labeling it 30 miles per hour. So in street design, of course, there's ways to create streets which keep the speed limit down. So I don't need an answer now, we're out of time, but in the future, how is this design going to ensure that 30-mile-per-hour limit? Thank you.
Well, in a part of the BLM, no improvement can happen unless BLM allows it, which we have a 1,000-year lease with them to go through there. In the urban area, we don't have enough right-of-way. So if the traffic is becoming an issue for bikers and also for the residents, what we call traffic calming. By what you suggested is a narrowing lane, putting pop-ups. There is a lot of, nowadays has really become more and more trying to create livable communities. So we are creating a lot more, items to be used out there to do the traffic calming, because you want to drive just cars, go on the interstate. I mean, this is just for communities.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I just clarify what the time is for the meeting on Thursday night at Donyana Elementary?
At 6 o'clock tomorrow.
Tomorrow or Thursday?
I mean, Thursday, I'm sorry, Thursday.
Thank you.
It's been a rough week, so I think on Wednesday.
Okay,
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
so our recommendation to the policy board, we need to rank the projects 1, 2, 3. You can't do 1, 1, 0.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
I guess I'll start. The Town of Mesilla project obviously is a very good project, and it's a rounding error to the other projects. So the question then becomes, and the city project, I see that as very important. That fits right in with what the MRA that they're doing there. All the planning that has been done, we've spent millions of dollars in planning already there. So there's interest from the city to do that infill development. So the question is, my question would be, would we rank the city as number 1 and the town would get awarded anyways because it's so small? Or do we rank the town because it's so easy and the city is number 2? Maybe Mr. Love has some insight, since it's state ranking will ultimately, DOT will ultimately do the awards, correct?
The reason is for having the MPOs and RPOs do the ranking is so the DOT doesn't have to do it for us.
But the DOT still makes the decision as to, because they have to look at all the projects in the state to make the final awards, right?
That is credit, and that's done up in Santa Fe.
Okay. Any other committee member have a thought?
Mr. Chair, yeah, I like Mesilla has done great things for such a small community. They've done wonderful things for active transportation. That one kind of, it's a small project, so that is a tough one. Oh, because it's small, let's do that one. But at the same time, the other ones are gonna have a very big impact, a huge impact, I think. I'm just a little unsure of the impact of the county's project, how that's gonna impact the national monument, good or bad. Could be getting a lot of traffic through there, but we want people at the national monument. That's a selling point for Las Cruces, but if it's done properly, correctly, the way I think maybe for all transportation. But then the cities also, I agree with you, it's going to have a huge impact. There's a lot of walkers, a lot of bikers on El Paseo. People that's their only transportation is in that area. So that is an equity issue, I think, in that piece also. But creating access around Main Street and Loman to get into town is huge also. So just some thoughts in my head. I don't really know other than that. Thank you.
So we need to move forward with this. So I guess I'm inclined, because the town, we need to reward the town for their diligence in everything else that they've done. So I guess I'd like to hear a motion. Of course, the members could motion something else, but I'd like to hear a motion that we rank Town of Mesilla as Project 1, City of Las Cruces as Project 2, and Donyana County Project as number 3. Or if somebody wants to make an alternative motion.
Yep, Chair. Probably having to come into, for all of us to come into consensus is probably going to take all night. So I don't have an issue just doing a show of hands for number 1, CLC, or number 2, Town of Mesilla, and then number 3, Donyana County. Just doing a count.
Mr. Chair, we can't do pseudo voting of that nature. What I would suggest is just going down the table and having every member offer their thoughts in order to sort of see where everybody is and then soliciting a motion at that point. But Mr. Casillas is correct. This could take a very long time, so we probably do need to get a feel of where everybody is, but we cannot do like a pseudo voting such as Mr. Casillas is suggesting.
Okay, well, I've expressed my opinion. Does any other committee member have an opinion? I guess first ask for an opinion that differs from that.
Mr. Chair, Harold Love, DOT. My ranking is Town of Mesilla, number 1, the county project, number 2, and the city project, number 3. And the reason for Mesilla and the county project being 1 and 2 is, well, the city project is on the state road. I mean, the Mesilla project is on the state road, so it enhances our facility. And also, the county project ties into Thorpe Road, and it also, as far as connectivity, it ties into the plan and work that we're looking to do on I-25 in that area and Thorpe Road.
Any other committee members?
Mr. Chair, Jim Wilcox for the record. I don't have adequate information to really make an informed decision, so I'm going to abstain.
Chair, I'm gonna, Albert Casillas for the record, I'm gonna echo Mr. Love's words on that too. I think the town of Mesilla, you know, that should be a pretty quick project, hopefully. You know, I want to thank everybody for coming in and giving us their presentations. I think we all have goals and actions and, you know, plans already in place to, you know, get all this done. I do like the county's project, having a second access to those schools. I think that's pretty big for me. So if I was to rank something, I would probably go with the town of Mesilla first, Doña Ana County second, and the city third.
Okay, so we've heard of 3 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Mr. Chair, Erica Christensen for the record. Just personally, I would put the City of Las Cruces project first, just because of the huge impacts and the safety in particular that we talked about. And for me, the other two are a toss-up. They're both seem like very important projects. I suppose I would put Town of Mesilla second, just because, just echoing what everyone else said, the ease of the project, the short timeline makes it appealing. So I would go City of Las Cruces, Town of Mesilla, and then the county project, 1, 2, 3.
Mr. Chair, I second that. I think equity is very important. Equity and safety are my reasons for prioritizing the city first. I think then agreeing with the town of Messilla's short timeline, good work that they've already done to make things happen and quick turnaround. And I do value the county's efforts as well, and I would put them third. And maybe there's enough money in the state that they can all get funded.
Andrew, do you have comments? Let's make a note that Andrew had no comments. Does the city have any comments? Daniel.
My ranking would be City of Las Cruces, the town of Mesilla second, and the Doña Ana County third.
Okay. So I think we've heard from the committee members. So I think what I'll ask for the motion. If you don't agree with the motion, you can vote no, and if it fails, we can try another motion. So somebody make a motion. What is the motion? To rank the 3 projects to the policy board. 1, 2, 3.
Mr. Chair, if I can clarify for the committee, some member of the committee will need to say, I make a motion to rank X, Y, and Z, and then it's thumbs up or thumbs down on that motion. So we're looking for a majority on whichever one gets a majority first. So, but we do need a motion specifically stating a ranking.
Chair, I'll take a stab at it. I make a motion in regards to the prioritization of the Transportation Project Fund project applications that we just heard today, based on our comments and input and based on the presentations. I make that motion to rank the city of Las Cruces first, the town of Mesilla second, and the county third.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chair, Ashley Curry, for the record, I second that motion.
Mr. Chair, before we tally, if staff could request that it actually be a roll call rather than
Yes, I
by
was just gonna
acclamation.
say that. So if we could have a roll call vote on this?
Yes. Mr. Casillas?
Yes.
Ms. Christensen?
Yes.
Ms. Curry?
Yes.
Mr. Bencomo?
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Mr. Love?
No.
Mr. Balderrama?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
We have 7-1, Mr. Chair.
So the motion has passed. So we're on to our next agenda item. Where are we? Proposed amendment to Mobility 2045, declassification of Zertuche?
Zertucci Lane.
Zertucci, okay, Lane. And we might as well keep our 15-minute rule. That's been working.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dominic Loya for MPO staff. So I will be presenting this item. So we have received a request to declassify Zertucci Lane. It is on the future thoroughfares map as a collector. Because it is both in the city and the county, it runs right along the edge of the border. And we'll go ahead and look at that here in a second. The only request we've had, the city and the county have both agreed that it can be removed as a collector. The county would like it to stay as a major local for their street design. So this is the future thoroughfare plan. And this is the area we're talking about. This is out by Vista Middle School and Columbia. So as you can see, Zertucci Lane is right here. This runs in between both. This is where Vista Middle School is. This is where Columbia used to be. As you can see, we have Taylor Road up here. And then we have the extension of Engler down here. So that kind of makes Zertucci slightly redundant in it being a collector. Here is the satellite image, as you can see. So this actually only has 16 feet of right-of-way, and then there's a 10-foot easement for El Paso Electric that is added onto that, which is why it looks wider than it is. This portion up here is paved. This is unpaved all the way through here. And basically this portion right here is within the city limits. This is county right here. This neighborhood here is in the county.
So is that orange dash, is that the city-county border?
Sort of. This is off of Google Maps, and they're not quite, it's not quite accurate as to where the line is. The line actually runs, when this was annexed into the city, the line runs around Vista, along this side of the road, then comes back across here, and then goes around this neighborhood. This neighborhood did not want to be within the city when the annexation happened. I believe it was in 1986. And then goes down Elks Drive.
So I missed that. The Columbia property is inside city limits?
Columbia property is not inside city
So
limits.
just the middle school property?
This middle school, because this neighborhood does not want to be in the city, and therefore it couldn't be an island. If the Columbia property was annexed into the city, then this would become basically an island in the county surrounded by the city. So this is the current conditions out there. As you can see, this portion that is within the county is paved. This portion here is in the city, and it is a dirt road. It is also a private road. It does have the brown sign on it saying that it is a private road at this point. So what we're looking at here, so right away is basically 16 feet. You can see where this wall is to the fence is exactly 16 feet. This extra area over here is an easement for El Paso Electric. And this is a sign basically stating that it is a private road and for residents only. You cannot drop off children in between the schools. The school district also said it does not want people dropping off children in between the two schools. It prefers them at the front door. They spoke with the policy board on that. So you can see again here, like I said, this is where the old Columbia Elementary School used to be, which I do believe Las Cruces Public Schools plans on rebuilding it. So they do plan on rebuilding this school. And this, of course, is Vista. This is their athletic fields, which is where the road runs right next to. So we do have a 30-day public comment period open right now, and we are requesting that BPAC make a recommendation to the policy board.
So the presentation mentioned major local. Is that a classification that the MPO uses?
The MPO does not use that, but that is something the county does use in their designs.
Okay. So they can call it whatever they want. The MPO map will just show it as a local road.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other committee members have questions? Hearing none, I'll hear a motion to recommend approval of removing Certucci Lane from the map to the policy board.
Andrew Bencomo, so moved.
Ashley Curry, second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed? So we're on to discussion items. Public participation plan update presentation.
You're getting a lot of me tonight, Mr. Chair. I'll be handling this one as well. Don McLoy for MPO staff. So we've come up to the time where it's time to look at the public participation plan again. It has to be reviewed every time before we start a MTP process. So we are getting ready to head into that process again. So the Metropolitan Transportation Plan is back up for review again. So we have to review the public participation plan. So this is just be going over kind of the basics. The current public participation plan was in your packet. So basically it provides a guide for all public participation activities. And it also has tools and processes to facilitate public participation. And as I said, it has to be updated before every MTP. And it governs basically all the comment periods on required work products. So as you saw, we had a 30-day public comment period for an MTP amendment. That is covered under this. And when I say all work products, the MTP, the TIP, UPWP, the public participation plan itself also is in there, and the annual listing of obligated projects. So in this case, we will be presenting a draft at your next meeting with minor changes. Mostly, it's going to be adding tools for virtual public engagement. As we found out in 2020, we didn't have the tools necessary to do that, and we were kind of making it up on the fly as we went. We're now going to go ahead and put it in the plan as something we can use regularly. And I will now stand for any questions.
Okay, I guess one question that may or may not apply to this. The MPO is looking at the new, is it a JPA, whichever acronym, JPO. Would that change, require any changes in this plan?
Mr. Chair, I'll be talking more about that during staff comments, but in a direct answer to your question, no, not really. Not really. That's not going to change anything with regards to the PPP specifically.
Okay. Any committee members have questions? Okay, thank you for the presentation. We're on to the Mesilla Valley MPO Annual Safety Report.
And Ms. Katarina Pervingu will be presenting that, Mr. Chair.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and committee members. This is the 2023 Annual Safety Report. I would like the committee to keep in mind that this is not a complete reflection of the total data analysis. The Annual Safety Report, the full length, everything is in your packet, and it's also posted on our website as well. So this is a summary. So in 2020, so the 2023 Annual Safety Report is focused on the crash data from 2020. So in total, there were 3,002 crashes. Of those crashes, there were 16 fatalities. Of those crashes, there were 36 serious injuries. And of those crashes, 69 of those involved pedestrians and bicyclists. So this looks familiar. I went over this. This was gone over in last fall. So our fatalities, this is the total number of fatalities within the Mesilla Valley MPO area. It does show an increasing trend in fatalities. With that, the 5-year moving average is showing, it's predicted to show an increasing trend. However, in the years 2016 through 2020, it fluctuates greatly, so it's unclear as to whether this trend will continue. It's unclear if these projected numbers will occur or not. And then these are the rate of fatalities based on VMT, 100 million VMT. Again, it shows same fluctuation in the rates, just like the real numbers, and it shows an increasing trend. Again, not sure if we can rely on the projected values or not, just based on that fluctuation. So these are the rates. So the rate of fatalities, ours compared to the state of New Mexico's. Again, ours fluctuates. However, the state does show a slight increasing trend throughout the years since 2017. So the Mesilla Valley, so these are the fatalities mapped out. We did have 2 incidences in the year 2020 that involved had 2 fatalities occur in them. That's why we have some orange dots that's where 1 fatality was. The red dots sadly showed 2. We did have some within the city of Las Cruces, Doña Ana County. We also had some in South Valley around Vado. So these are the classification of those fatalities. This is what was like a fixed object was involved or another vehicle. In the center of the city of Las Cruces, we had, and also around the university, there were 3 fatalities that involved a pedestrian. Also on I-10, just north of Vado, we had or right between Vado and Mesquite, there was also a fatality involving a pedestrian. These are the serious injuries that occurred within our area. Serious injuries are Class A injuries, so the most severe type of injury. These are the classifications. So again, this is with a fixed object or some other object or non-collision. Other vehicles, pedal cyclists, along with pedestrians as well. And again, there were 36 serious injuries in 2020. So the serious injury rates is showing a decreasing trend based on past data, and our predictions are also showing that trend continuing. There's not a lot of fluctuation, so hopefully this decreases and it holds true. The rate of serious injuries reflects the same number of serious injuries, where it also shows a decreasing trend. So compared to the, with our rate of serious injuries, again, that's based on the 100 million VMT, we are showing, again, that decreasing trend. And looking at the state, they are showing a slight decrease, slight decreasing trend. However, it is holding steady. But in our forecasts, in our predictions, we're showing to fall below the state's rate of serious injuries. The fatalities, this is looking at the fatalities by the month and the serious injuries by the month. So at the beginning of 2020, we did have quite a few fatalities occur, and then we had more of those than we did, well, higher trend technically of the fatalities than the serious injuries. However, you can see as the year continued, and again, this is 2020, this was during the pandemic, looking at the serious injuries, there was a lull in the spring. This is when quarantine occurred, less people out. However, when more drivers were present on the roads, we did have an increase again in serious injuries as the year continued, and a spike in fatalities as the year continued. So this is a heat map of all crashes in the year 2020, all 3,002 crashes. What we did here was we just looked at the numbers of the timing of all these crashes occurring. So let's say we see a spike right here, 46 crashes. So throughout all of 2020, all the Wednesdays at 3 o'clock in the afternoon of 2020, we had 46 crashes occur at that time on those Wednesdays, so the trend that we can see here is that as the day progresses and more drivers are present on the road, there's a higher chance and higher occurrence of crashes occurring. We also looked at the basically the month and days of the year. So again, we have a 46 right here. This is all of the Fridays in May. There were 46 crashes that occurred of all total Fridays in May. So this is just another heat map showing if we could see any patterns. The pattern we did kind of notice was that as we get towards the end of the week, it seems like crashes tend to increase Wednesday, Thursdays, Fridays. We did have, I guess, you could see quite a few crashes, of course, January, February, March, pre-quarantine, pre-pandemic, and it did decrease, but it continued to pick up as the year progressed. This is looking at all of the crashes, all 3,002 crashes, and the lighting of those at the time of the crashes. We had a significant amount, basically the majority of all the crashes did occur in broad daylight. We had some, very few at dawn. We had some at dusk. And then we also had, our second largest was, it's dark, but it's lit, meaning maybe it's a porch light or maybe a street light from far away. I did speak with a sergeant from LCPD discussing how they determine the lighting at the location of the crash, and that's up to the police officer at the time. Basically, they go out there and they use their best judgment, and then they put that in their police report. So this is based on their data and what they saw at the time and reported at that time. These are the factors. So these are all the different factors that can be involved in a crash. So factors involved in all all 2020 crashes, all 3,002 crashes. Now, I know that the percentages do not add up to 100%, but not all crashes had, like, there are a majority of the crashes did not have any of these factors involved in them, which is why. So of the factors that can be involved in a car, in a crash, alcohol was the highest at 5.1%. We did have at 4.5%, trucks were involved. And now this is back in 2020, and drugs were at 0.9%. Oh, yes. Okay, and then these are the, so now these are the numbers for the non-motorized fatalities and injuries, so non-vehicular traffic, bicyclists and pedestrians. There's a large fluctuation that occurs, but so again, just like before with the fatalities, the predictions, the projected numbers show holding steady, the average slightly increasing. However, because of the large fluctuation in our actual numbers, it's hard to really say if it's actually going to follow that trend. So now focusing on the bicycle and pedestrian data, there were 69 total pedestrian and pedocyclist involved crashes. 39 of those involved a pedestrian, 30 of those involved a pedocyclist. There were 4 pedestrian-involved fatalities. There were 3, for each of them, there were 3 pedestrian-involved serious injuries and 3 pedocyclist-involved injuries. There were no pedocyclist-involved fatalities. So that's one positive. This is looking at all of the pedestrian pedocyclist involved crashes with the lighting that I mentioned before with all crashes. However, this is just for pedocyclists and pedestrian pedocyclist involved crashes. The dark but lit are in purple. Dark not lighted is in black. So probably little to no lighting in that area. See, we had also dawn, daylight, dusk. So this is a map of that. We do have other maps. In the report, there are other maps that show more details in different parts of our area. So like I said, the full report can be found on the MPO website. It's at the top of our page. You can click on the Maps and Resources page, and there's a tab under there that does say Mesilla Valley MPO Annual Safety Report. I will now stand for any comments, questions.
Okay, thank you. On one of the first maps, you had the different types of crashes, and I thought one of the icons was for a pedocyclist. I think that was the fatality map, but then you said no pedocycle fatalities, and I didn't remember.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe you can go back to.
Was it
I think it was the first.
Classification one, correct? Sorry, Mr. Chair. Was it? Oh, no. Oh, I went too far.
Next one.
This one.
There must have been another one after that. There, that one.
Oh, pedocyclists. For serious injuries.
Right, the pedocyclist. That looks like a pedocycle. Down in the very, by the I-10, I-25 intersection.
Yes. Yes, that was, that one was not on the interstate. It was on Choya, on the university. Choya Street.
So I don't recall that. I've been monitoring the UNM pedestrian crashes, and I didn't see anything listed for 2020 there in Las Cruces area. And I don't recall, I mean, the problem with this data, of course, is now that it's past my normal range of memory for these types of things. But my recollection, the last couple of crashes in the city, there was the one on Main Street across from the Pizza Hut, which was like at the beginning of 2022. And then the other one that I remember is the one over here on Motel and Amador. Those are the only recent petacycle crashes that I recall.
And Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify, you had mentioned fatalities. This was not a fatality. This was a
Oh, it's
serious injury.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't know about it. Okay, thank you. I didn't look at it closely enough. Thank you. Any committee members have questions?
I have a question. Erica Christensen, for the record. What are you
I
basing your
think you need to be on the
projections?
mic a little better.
Oh, sorry. Mr. Chair, I have a question about the projections, future projections. What information are those based on?
These are based on, Mr. Chair, sorry, Ms. Christensen. So these are based on past data that we received from UNM and NMDOT. These, the factual numbers that we received them about 2 years later. It's all based on a lot of like police reports and whatnot. They put it all together for us. And so looking at the data, like so 2020, that's the last one we have of all the factual numbers. And then 2021, 2022, 2023, these are based on basically a linear forecasting tool that we use in Excel to help us out. And then because with these graphs, with this data, we mirror basically NMDOT's annual safety report, because they put one out as well. And we do this to kind of compare our numbers to theirs.
All right, thank you.
So, it's just like, so 2020 was the anomalous year. And if I remember in our safety targets, we skipped that year for some of the data. Is that?
Because, yes, so that was because NMDOT did that in their data, but New Mexico did that with their data. But looking at our safety report, we felt it would be kind of hard to write a report on 2020 data without including the year 2020.
Right.
That's a bit of a challenge for us. But so we went ahead and we threw in the 2020 data into.
So last year's report would have been before the pandemic, or using data from before the pandemic, but you would have estimated the 2020 rates.
Last year, you're talking about these numbers, but in last fall, correct?
Right. So right now, the 2021, 22, 23 are estimated.
Well, this is the same data. This is the same data, but when we calculated everything with when we calculated and did the projections, we just went ahead and included 2020 to see if it made a difference. It made very little difference.
If we went back 2 years and looked at what the projections were for this, how did the projections come out with the actuals now? Do you have a feel for that?
It was very little change.
Okay, so
I think
so it had good projections.
I think when we did do that, when we included the 2020 data, I think the largest drop I saw was 0.7 points.
Okay.
Just because everything did drop slightly, or especially with it dropped slightly.
Might be more interesting if we get back to the historic high fatality rates that the country has been experiencing. Okay, Andrew?
I had a question on the slide that shows the factors. That's
It was this one.
So just curious, alcohol and drugs are factors. How is a pedestrian a factor or a motorcycle a factor in a crash?
This is what was reported in different factors that were just basically looking at a vehicular crash, what kind of factors come in and what's involved in it. It could be a truck, it could be just a commercial vehicle, a school bus, something. Pedestrians and pedocyclists are not, anything that's not a vehicle. Is that involved in the crash or not? It's more of
no
factors
real correlation between one bar to the next. This is just the whole thing presented.
Right.
Okay, because usually like alcohol, drugs, speeding, those are factors in crashes.
Right.
Not what's involved in it. So how is,
It's,
I'm not sure how that works.
I mean, it's just that was the way, like, when they presented us the data, it says factors involved, and then it has these, in the raw data, these are all listed. And so we just wanted to see, well, I think
Okay,
it's,
so-
I think it's, yeah, it was just it was just looking at the raw data and how to like try and like find some kind of trend with everything.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Jim Wilcox for the record. First off, I appreciate there's a huge amount of effort going into collating this data. That's really great. I'm not sure how much of it's actionable. If it says Wednesdays are a bad day, maybe more police are out on Wednesdays, or we cancel Wednesday might be another option. That's just a little bit of humor. But one of the things about your statistics is that there's fortunately actually not many many crashes in a particular time frame. So your variance, because your instrument is not sensitive under those circumstances, where you have maybe one time frame of 3 and another time frame of 5, that it can change because there's just a couple more or a couple fewer, so you don't have a good confidence interval, saying how much from a certain confidence interval can we make this projection. So if there's a way to put a confidence interval on your future projections and say, we have a 95% confidence interval that this is our projection for the future, but I think that'd be really difficult because you have so few incidents to rely upon. One thing that I find kind of interesting is that the latest fatality on Picacho, the newspaper reported that the person was not in a crosswalk. Well, sounds on surface to be interesting, but how far away was the crosswalk? Was this person ambulatory? So we don't get a chance to really look at those details and do it basically an accident investigation to see what the structural causes were to this. We imply that the person who was walking didn't use a crosswalk. Maybe the crosswalk was too far away. Maybe not, we don't know. So one of the things that I recommend, this is just simply a recommendation for the record, is that we have some way to get data back on what specifically happened, especially with fatalities or other incidences where we can see specifically what the road design is at that location, so we can identify whether or not there was inadequate crossing facilities available. So just a thought, something for the record. And again, I really appreciate your efforts to put this data together.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilcox. That was taken into account looking at what part of the road with the different crashes and whatnot, because in the raw data, there were some parts where it did talk about, did it happen in an intersection? Did it happen at a curve? What part of the roadway? Was it off the road? Was it on the sidewalk? Unfortunately, when we analyzed the data, there was about, I want to say around 80% of the total crashes had that part left blank. So it wasn't reported.
Excuse me, what part left blank?
Where it talks about whether it was on the straight part or it
So
was
the
on an
location
intersection.
data-
The location data.
Location data wasn't included.
Some of it, yeah. There was a large amount, and it was to the point where it's like, if we're working with, 3/4 of that part missing.
It's hard to make conjecture. Sure, thanks.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to move us along since we're.
Mr. Chair, if I could just make one comment to Mr. Wilcox. We have actually, and the majority of the committee here are witnesses to this, we have made a number of efforts over the course of the past 3 or 4 years of trying to get the state of New Mexico to find some way of inducing law enforcement to do a better job in the reporting on the crash reports. we're kind of an end user of that data, and we are keenly aware of the lacks with regard to that. Unfortunately, law enforcement is, proportionally speaking to us, very, very strong, set in their ways, and we don't really have any good leverage. But it is something that we had another attempt at it last year, and periodically we'll probably launch ourselves at that windmill, see if we get a better result. But we are keenly aware of the lacks.
Well, thank you for that. Keep plugging away.
Mr. Chair, may I interject? Maurice Williams from NMDOT's Pedestrian Safety Campaign is going to be down here mid-May doing a whole week of safety training for law enforcement on exactly that, collecting crash data and how to do it. And at the same time, he's hoping to meet with the press to educate them on victim blaming and how to report accurately on crashes as well. So that actually, I don't know if you were aware of that, but he will be down, and there will be another attempt made soon.
Okay, thank you. So we'll try to get out of here by 7. So we'll move on to our activity centers and travel demand presentation.
Thank you. I would like to present Dr. Michael McAdams.
I'll try to be as brief as possible, let me go ahead. What my presentation about activities and travel demand is actually prompted by a question from the policy committee. And so this is a general thing. Activity centers are clusters of industrial, retail, and mixed-use land use, and urban areas of concentration where we have a lot of activity patterns, and activities are different sizes, of course. And then why do activity centers evolve and evolve? We look at the city, our city, we see that they rise, like downtown was an activity center at one time, and they fall. And the dynamics is, why things develop is called urban morphology. In fact, my dissertation was that one too, so I can wax on that too as well. But you look at the type of activity centers, you look at commercial, industrial, parks, rec, government transportation hubs like airports, public transit centers, campuses like universities, and also public assistance centers like homeless shelters, senior centers, where their meals are provided. You look at everything in an urban area has hierarchy, right? So some places are primary activity centers, others are secondary, some are urban core, and others suburban or exurban. Excuse me. And one of my fields of expertise is travel demand modeling, and that was my thesis topic. So if you look at the numerous types of magnitude of trips, the area, the major producers that produce trips, and like residential areas produce trips, and like industrial areas, retail attract trips. And so you have personal, and you have those related activity centers too. The bigger activity center, the more trips are produced. So, and you have what types of trips you have? Personal, which is motorized or non-motorized. Public transportation, are going to freight, which is motorized now and maybe different in the future, we don't know. And of course, one of my favorite topics is public transportation. And youth who don't have cars are 10 to 20, 30% of the population. Seniors who do not drive or should not drive are 5 to 15%. And then adults unable to drive due to disability is 3 to 5. And low-income individuals are high of 30%, which is a lot of people that use bicycles, that use public transportation to walk, do that because not that they want to a lot of times, but that they have to. Oh, crap, let me go backwards. Now, this is called the journey. This is called the trip diary, and we had to do this in school too. Everybody has a trip pattern, right? So maybe you go to home, you go to work, that's the most common trip pattern. And then lunch, you walk to the bank. And then, or maybe you go to, on the way home, you go to pharmacy, you go to soccer practice of your child, then go home. So this is, you combine all these trips together, that creates the trips, you know. but they also, it gets more varied than that. Okay. This is actually not this is not a thing for night, it's actually a remote sensing image looking at impervious surface. It means asphalt, concrete, et cetera. And basically I did this, you'll see it again when the urban areas talk about impervious surface, but you usually look at the concentration of land uses, really cluster, and then of course you have El Paso, the lower end, which are cluster activity center too. And I looked at this, has come from other data. See the previous estimated classified image, and you can see that activity centers create a large agglomeration of urban areas. Within the urbanized areas are individual activity centers, and the Los Cupid urban area interact with nearby communities, reflecting different levels of personal and truck trips. And this comes from data from the census, and basically you can see that, of course, the majority of trips are internal, but we have a good bit of trips that go back and forth between El Paso and other areas, rural areas surrounding. And also we have a good bit of trips to Albuquerque, Phoenix, Tucson, and other areas. And this is the National Generation National Household Transportation Study OD data. And that's the link right there. The same study looked at, you know, where trips are, where we're originating from. El Paso, again, also from not urbanized area around us, Albuquerque, Phoenix, and Tucson, et cetera. So it's not just internal trips that are coming through our area, but also external trips that are important too. And these are factored in travel demand modeling. If you look at this as a total employment, no surprise, but this is one of the bases for looking at travel demand modeling. Of course, you see a large concentration on Lowman and the doctor's offices in Dripping Spring University, and the university near downtown, but not downtown, and others on the west side too. And these are the primary activity centers. You can name them, I guess, names too. If you concentrate after all these activities centers, you know, interact with each other, producing trips, attracting trips, they manifest themselves in volume, traffic volume. And of course, you can break down those of peak hours and non-peak hours and capacity, et cetera. And if you look at, when you go and look at travel demand modeling, that's your ultimate thing to predict trips in the future. And that will how, if you look at 2050, that's what I look at too. I look at the bandwidths and see about overall trends. You look at this, here is also transit ridership and OD is a little bit different. And the highest, we look at the highest stops. The two highest are, of course, the movie center and also the Seal Valley Mall because they are transfer centers, but also places, my favorite place to talk about is Walton and Lowman, which are McDonald's because it's across from Walmart, El Paseo at Albertsons, and Walgreens, and all the Valley Walmart, and also the Walmarts are high attractors or attract for trips as well. So we look at that in transit planning, and where are the highest stops, we try to do amenities to them, and also how to connect them to bike paths, and all the buses have bike racks on them, and also sidewalks too, yeah. We said, so. Now, if you look at travel demand modeling, activity centers are a key element. These are major in travel demand modeling, and they analyze the factors that contribute to future travel. Vehicle or non-vehicle is key, and the factors are part of travel demand modeling. The basic elements of travel demand is called the four-step model. And this has been done at least 50 years now. You have the trip generation, meaning what trips, you know, production and attractions is what trips are generated, how are they going, generally by zones, mode choice, how they be made, you know, vehicle, public bus, public transit, pedestrian, or bicycle. And trip assignments, how are you going to assign them to the trips to the roads? If you look at how many trips will people take and where will they go? It's the factors of number, the size of households. Every household is different, and we found that Actually, the highest generating traffic is not from apartments, but from single-family houses as far as trip rates. And the density value all drive how much travel flows in specific areas within the region. Once the model generates a certain number of trips, then we determine which trips the TAZs or traffic analysis zones are going to. And then, of course, we say, and generally there's several models to do this, and it's intrinsic to the model you're using, and you say, of these trips are going from zone to zone, how will they be done? You know, we go vehicle, majority in this area are vehicles, but in large urban areas, you may have like a greater portion of public transit or in non-motorized as well. So you can view that and look at the origin destination, and then you say the shortest path for assignment, how they can put into each route. And so what route they take, that's basically shortest path as a rule. And other factors like capacity restraint, because it means if the capacity is too high on one, it will shift over to another facility, another facility, traffic signals, et cetera. And how do we know, and this is the hard part, how do we know that these are predicting fairly? What we do is generally do calibration. We predict for the present year. We see how much they are. Our model has been calibrated through Caliper, we use Transcat, so we know they're variable. But as you look farther out, the projections are based on future households and employment, and the farther you get out, the more dice you get to. So these are used not as forecasts or predicted forecasts, but for alternative analysis. That's because look at how expensive just one section of road, 30 million, which is Bedonia, that's expensive. So you want to do at least try, and this is kind of this travel demand model is definitely it's full of holes. It's full of assumption, and it's like a sieve. But when you look at what do we do, just toss dice, or we do by opinion. So this way of, and it's a valid method accepted by the FHWA to look at future patterns, and we look at alternative analysis. It's not perfect, but it's accepted, which doesn't make it good either. But it's not predictive, And so it's just for alternative analysis, and things can change. Now, travel demand models result can assist in decision making, not be the sole source. And the result can vary depending on the ideas, information used. And believe me, you can go to how many angels will have a pen with some of the modeling stuff. Whole volumes of research are devoted to this. So it's on assumption, and you look at the aggregate nature of the regional. What they're doing is to look at future scenarios, right? How do we want our community development? How do we look at growth? In a lot of times you look at, we didn't do it because it was so complicated to do the forecast in the beginning. You look at what areas we grew. We look at, if we shift the growth a little bit, how they'll affect it. So all the projection we do could be shifted, and they could change over time too. So, and conclusion, activity centers are the nodes which have development forms. Activities are evolving and may decrease. Like we say, El Paseo used to be one of the chief economic areas in the city. Now it's in decline, right? While we have Lowman increasing. And so transportation may focus on the future of the network. And different scenarios can be examined, travel demand. In the coming decade, new aspects of travel demand will have to be addressed. Called agent-based modeling. There's other kind of modeling you use too. And I stand for your questions or our criticism of the model. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I guess as you were doing the presentation, you showed the asphalt coverage. And to my mind, I was thinking, well, what about the heat index in that same area? And what about the urban tree canopy? How could those?
The remote sensing can be affected by that, but there's just they took the satellite imagery and they do light classification, and there's a certain pattern in the remote sensing images that will say this is impervious surface, this is not. The other thing about tree canopy and heat is another way of doing remote sensing too. That's another aspect. So that was more of a way of identifying urbanized areas. That's it. I'm not really sure if there's effective urban heat in that environment. It could be, you know.
Right.
I always hesitate, you know, a little bit on some of this stuff too.
So there's been a lot of talk about the 15-minute city lately. If we had a 15-minute city, then you wouldn't need to do all this because everybody would stay within their zone and then
That's correct.
those big fat lines wouldn't be so apparent anymore.
I think that's the goal, to try to have multi-use. Of course, the zoning patterns and the way the city has developed over the last 50 years, if not longer, has been to segregate land uses, industrial here, commercial here, residential here. And obviously, look at mixed-use development, that decreases trip length, exactly. But we have to make, as you know, make it accommodating for people to get to somewhere to walk.
Right.
And I walk now, I live near downtown now, and I have to cross Alameda, there's no crosswalks. And so, I mean, now I'm really a pedestrian, and really if it's discouraging for people to walk, they won't. So it's not just getting people close together, land use, but, you know, commercial, employment, et cetera, but making it amenable for people to walk or want to walk.
Okay, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
So just to wrap this up, one question for each committee member if they have a question.
Okay. I know it's late. If you don't have questions.
Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much. I understand.
So we're on to committee and staff comments. City of Las Cruces.
Yes, the only project to report on is the Walnut Madrid project. That's currently under construction, and it should be completed within the midsummer.
Okay, thank you. Doña Ana County.
I have no comment at this point.
Town of Mesilla, not here. NMSU, not here. Public schools.
Yes, it's Ashley Curry for the record. I just wanted to make sure that the committee all knows that we have our big event, our bike event, the Family Bike Fiesta on April 29th, Saturday, Lynn Middle School, 9 a.m. to noon. I do have flyers. If anybody would be willing to take one and put them up and help us get the word out or share it on social media. This event prepares us for National Bike to School Day, which will be celebrated from May 2nd through May 5th, with a few outlying schools beyond that as well. And we have most of our schools participating, with the exception of Loma Heights due to the construction, and the exception of Sonoma with not a safe route for them to walk on, and not Fair Acres or Columbia either. Thank you. That's all from me.
Okay. NMDOT.
Harold Love, NMDOT, a couple of projects, active projects. US 70 mile marker 143 to 161, Mountain States will continue with pavement striping and eradication at Sonoma Ranch, from Sonoma Ranch Boulevard to Del Rey. Contractors' hours will be from 8 to 6 a.m. Sunday through Thursday, and drivers should expect and plan accordingly. Also on US 70 mile marker 166 to 172, contractor will be clearing culverts and arroyos. That's near the White Sands Missile Range interchange, and drivers can expect lane closures eastbound and westbound as needed. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. MPO staff update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will try to be as brief as I can. The MPO is at the current moment entering into a paradigmal level shift with regards to our relationship with the city of Las Cruces. We are currently in, I guess I would call it the latter stages of negotiating MOA with the city of Las Cruces. The city manager has agreed in principle with this MOA. The MOA will separate MPO staff excuse me, administratively from the city of Las Cruces. That is to say, we will no longer be part of the city's chain of command. MPO staff will report directly to the MPO Policy Board as our responsible party going forward. The city of Las Cruces will remain as the fiscal agent for the MPO. That means that they will continue to upfront our costs and then seek reimbursement from the federal government for those costs, as they always have historically. Additionally, as part of the fiscal agent role, the City of Las Cruces will continue to provide HR, payroll, benefits, IT support, vehicle maintenance, finance support, which is part of the JPA that they're obligated as part of the fiscal agent role. But those things the city will continue to provide, but that will be done on the basis of a fiscal agent fee that will be provided by the MPO to the City of Las Cruces for those services. Where we are right now is we are waiting for the City of Las Cruces to make its initial offer as to what it would like to assess as a fiscal agent fee. I will say that there probably will, or I am anticipating that there will be some back and forth between the MPO and the city on that number, so it will take a little bit to settle on that. There are some federal limitations on what the city can ask for with regards to fiscal agent fee, and overall, the policy board just needs to feel that the fee being assessed by the city will be reasonable. I know this is a lot in kind of a short space of time. We have talked about this in at least allusion with this board before, but we are entering into, at least as far as the paperwork goes, the home stretch. We haven't gotten started on any of the, on some of the changes, but I am in contact or working on finding a new legal counsel for the MPO, as we will need to have an independent legal counsel. I'm also working with a realtor to find a new office location for the MPO, and we will be seeking liability insurance for the MPO independently of the city going forward. So that's where we are. My current goal is to have all of this in place by the start of calendar year 2024. I'm hopeful that that will be possible, but don't hold me to that. It could take longer. A lot depends on how long it takes us to arrive at the final agreed upon number with the city, because before that, we can't really get the adoption process started until we have complete agreement on all parts of the document, which will also necessitate a JPA amendment to encompass the changes with regards to MPO staff, which that adds on another block of time because the state of New Mexico has to approve the JPA, which is why we're keeping the MOA and the JPA separate. We want to be able to edit the MOA without having to involve the state necessarily, whereas with the JPA we have to. So, like I said, I know that's a lot of information in a relatively short amount of time. I'm happy to answer questions. I know this evening probably may not be the best time, but if anybody has any questions about the situation, please feel free to reach
A
out.
couple of quick acronym expansions. JPA's joint power agreements, that's between the city, the town of Mesilla, and Doña Ana County, which allows the entity to exist. And the NMDOT is not part of the JPA, right? They're just part of the bylaws?
They are, in the sense that they are, I guess I would call them a consultative member. The NMDOT itself does not signify approval of the JPA other than its member voting yes, hopefully, on the amendment. It's the State of New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration that is the one who signifies state approval of JPAs.
Okay, and the other acronym, MOA, that one?
Memorandum of Agreement, that basically is document that two entities or more are coming into and defining the characteristics of some relationship
So that'll be
between those parties.
between the MPO and the city?
Yes, the JPA will continue to be between city, county, town. The MOA specifically will be between the MPO as an entity and the city of Las Cruces.
Okay, and the service fee that the city is going to be looking for, will the MPO have to increase their fees to the entities or look for additional federal funding, or will you just have to reduce your budget to fit in with what you get from the feds?
We'll be reducing the budget. We're not going to be asking for more money. That both speaks to the nature of the federal constraints that are on the city's request, and also the reasonableness of the request with the eyes of the policy board. But I can't get into any more detail about the parameters of that conversation here and now.
Okay. We'll just move on to committee member update. So I had been asked about the feasibility of possibly changing the name of this committee from BPAC to Active Transportation Committee. With respect to what you just said, the mechanics, I would presume, would be a change of the bylaws. But I would think that that's something that we could look at maybe in about a year after everything happens. So that's how I'd like to respond to that request, which is a reasonable request. I think it's worth discussion, but it just doesn't fit into the time frame right now. So I did attend the National Bike Summit. There was an FHWA employee there that was running around asking everybody, do you have bike ped data to count? I think our MPO really doesn't have any. So my question is, and looking at the Safe Streets for All grant that's available out there, MPOs would be qualified to ask for a grant, apply for a grant under that program. And so I know I'm springing this without any thought. Would it be feasible for the MPO to put together a grant to do a traffic count program for bike peds?
Not at this time, no. We are at bandwidth with regard, because of the transition that we're undergoing. We just can't take anything on board like that. In future, after the transition is done, we could look at it, but I'll tell you right now, no, we won't be.
Yeah, and I don't remember what the time frame is for the Safe Streets for All.
I think it is
it's
going
like
to be a recurring, ongoing program over the course of time, so there will be other opportunities.
probably authorized under the BIL, so it's probably like a 5-year program. Okay, and the other thing, we're coming up on Bike Month, so I just want to go through some of the activities that are coming up. On Sunday, April 23rd, there's going to be the Tour de Optimism. Saturday, April 29th, Family Fun Fiesta, which Ms. Curry referred to. The week of May 1st is Bike to School Days. On May 6th, Val Crucis is going to have a bike swap at the downtown mall. May 17th is the Ride of Silence that starts at Mesilla. And Friday, May 19th is Bike to Work Day. I don't know if there's any specific activity, but Val Crucis will be looking at doing a meet and greet afterwards, and so that'll be announced in due course. Committee members, comments?
Mr. Chair, I just had a question for the county. What is the status of the multi-use trail going down Elks from where Columbia was down to Thorpe Road?
Yep, Chair. So the last thing I heard was when they went out for bid, there were some bids on the project that came in higher than the amount of the funding that was secured for the project. So right now, advanced planning, we're doing in a county, they're currently exploring ways to try and secure funding for that shortfall. That's pretty much where they're at right now.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Hear a motion to adjourn.
Ashley Curry, so moved.
I second that motion, I second that motion, Jim Wilcox.
So we have a motion and a second. Without objection, we're adjourned.